Hello, everyone. As always, welcome to the Shoot Art Podcast. This is episode 88 of the series. The podcast is a weekly series, as always, where I bring on guests from the film and game industries to talk about their journey and thoughts on education. Today's guest, we've got an amazing environment artist. We have Alec Tucker on the show. He's an environment artist at Epic Games. Alec, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure having you, man. And like I said, we're going to be diving into the world of Alec, so to speak. We're going to be talking about his artwork, and by gosh, do we have some... We're going to be talking about a lot of different topics that I've never really discussed on the podcast, and I was saying this earlier as well to Alec, is that he's done so many amazing things. He's also wrote a lot of incredible articles, by the way. Make sure to check them out on Experience Points. So if you've not heard of Experience Points, I highly recommend you to check them out. But we'll just start off with good old introductions, Alex. Tell us a wee bit about yourself, and we'll take it from there, man.
Sure. Hi, I'm Alec. I used to do film back when I graduated high school. I found that it wasn't for me, so I switched to animation and VFX for film, and then I realized that was also not for me, so then I switched to games, and then I graduated with a computer animation and game design degree, and then now I'm here.
Perfect. I know you're at Epic Games. What a journey, eh?
It was a very smooth transition from school to work, surprisingly.
Nice.
I feel like it wasn't very common that happens.
Yeah, but then again, it all planned out, if you know what I mean. Like, at the end of the day, when it comes to everyone's art journey, like, that's the reason why I do the podcast in the first place, is that everyone shares their different experiences. Like, you literally just started off with an amazing topic straight away. Like, you went through trial and error, trying these different things out. And you just literally, like, I guess, like, chopped them off the list, right? Is this for me? Yes or no? Next one, okay, trial and error, see what happens. Does it work for me? Yes or no? And then on to the next one. And, like, I guess, like, speaking of that topic, so it's California you studied in, isn't it?
Yes, I grew up in California. I was born in Northern California.
Okay.
I lived in Northern California pretty much my entire life, and then all of the 3 different colleges that I tried going to were all in Northern California.
Nice.
So I didn't really go very far.
No, but, like, at the day, man, like, I guess, like, one of the main things I think would be really interesting to talk about is, like, for example, in California. So one of my good friends, he lived there for about 8 years, and he was telling me about the opportunities that rise over there for him, because he studies animation and he's now a YouTuber, and he does stuff for, like, DreamWorks, etc. And he was telling me about the things that the events, you name it, all these different things that take place. Obviously, America is America. Like, there's so many amazing opportunities over there in regards to the game and the film industries. Like, it's jam packed. But
absolutely,
would you say, like, obviously you through these amazing experiences through trial and error, figuring out your path, what was kind of like, I guess the best question for me to start off with, like, what was, like, the sources available for you in regards to education? Like, was it very strong in terms of the gaming side of things, just in case anyone's listening from that part of the world?
It seems to, at least with games around where I grew up, doesn't seem to be a very prominent thing.
Okay.
The only game studio I could think of that was anywhere near where I grew up was EA Games Capital, I think it's called, and it's in Sacramento, which is near where I grew up in California. But I feel like every school I went to didn't really have a game design degree or anything visual effects related. The closest thing you could get was, like, communication or programming or things like that.
Yeah.
Computer engineering, stuff like that. So there wasn't really, like, an artistic game degree pretty much anywhere.
Yeah.
And I ended up finding one that was nearby that was at California State University, Chico. And it blew me, it's very different because the school itself kind of comes off as a party school and kind of more of like a sports oriented school, yet it has this very strong game degree / animation production degree. So the degree itself is split into 2 pieces: games and animated production, like movies, and things like that. And you make the choice at the beginning of your degree which one you want to pursue, and then there are specific classes that kind of follow along with that. And I actually started out in animation production because that's what I thought I wanted to do. And the more I did it, the less I liked the offline rendering pipeline.
Okay.
So I decided we were using Arnold in Maya, and it was like the worst the worst ever. I hated it.
You did not
Uh,
enjoy it, not for you.
yeah, and so decided to switch to games, and they teach Unity
Hmm.
as the main game engine for learning programming and learning art and stuff. So
Yeah.
did a little bit of Unity, and I started liking it more, but didn't really like Unity a whole lot.
Hmm.
So I was like, oh, maybe I should just try out Unreal Engine. I've seen every game ever like has this engine being used,
Yeah.
and so I started learning it, and I realized how much like the high quality art being pushed out from Unreal is insane.
Hmm.
This isn't just sponsored or anything, but I just really like Unreal
Yeah.
Engine, regardless if I'm working for Epic or not. But I really liked Unreal, and so I pursued that. And as I was doing that, I noticed that that wasn't really a thing that a lot of other people were doing,
Hmm.
at least in education in that part of California at all.
Okay.
And so I was trying to. It was like less of coursework teaching and more of me teaching myself in my free time.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, like having the degree and taking the classes definitely gave me experience that helped for finding a job.
Hmm.
It was just helping in other ways other than just the raw art
Yeah.
skill, if
Of
that makes
course.
sense.
Definitely.
Yeah, and it's like I think the biggest thing is just putting time into it outside of class.
Yeah.
That's
It,
by far the biggest.
completely agree. Like that was always the same for me, and I've realized it's obviously been the same for most people on the podcast, which is a shame. But it's also a positive in the sense that we naturally, at the day, like when it comes to any career path, you have to put the extra work no matter what. That's just the way
True.
it goes. It's the only way to get anywhere. But when it comes to the education side of things, it's a weird one in regards to the money aspect because I understand, especially in America and a lot of my friends who've studied abroad or in other countries. Yes, I still had to pay quite a lot for my education, but it wasn't as extreme as in, for example, my friend in California. And it's like you're wanting to get your worth. Like you should be getting taught what's going to get you ready for the industry whilst you're studying, if that makes sense. And when you're not getting it, it's always a bit of a like you're always wondering like how are they going to improve, what are they going to change. Like for example, you're talking about rendering. This is really fun about you saying rendering because like I'm an Arnold V-Ray guy, am I a guy? So we've got already conflict in the ranks here on the podcast. It's going to
I
kick
love
off.
Maya. I love Maya. I just hate Arnold.
All right, okay, it's okay, it's okay. It's actually really funny because when it comes to Arnold, so last week I was actually so I was doing a presenting with Cave Academy with a guy called Zeno Pilgrims, and we are talking about cameras and rendering Arnold. And dude, there's actually some really cool things that if you like, because I know you like your cameras. And by the way,
I do very much.
like speaking of cameras, we're gonna dive into that as well because I was, as always, I always do my research. You're amazing at taking photos. Like your Instagram is like epic. Like I was like
Oh,
checking out
cool.
your photos. I was like,
Oh,
right, this is really nice.
most
Um,
people don't look into that.
well, that's the thing. It's like when it comes to like, I'll go back to my. I know I've kind of twisted it onto a bit of a tangent from education, but that's
Oh,
just
that's
the way.
okay.
That's just the way I
Yeah,
roll. We're doing it
that's just how
naturally.
it goes.
Yeah,
Yeah, let's do it.
you got to have some fun. But it's just like when I saw your Instagram photos and stuff, and I was like, this is all beginning to add up because it's your understanding of the camera aspects, the tools, the the thing that actually makes a shot that is the reason what kind of draws me to your art in the first place. And I think it's like your theory and like your how can I say your visual knowledge that really stands out to me. And we'll definitely dive into everything because I've got literally every question possible ready. So be ready to be
All right.
bombarded. But
All right.
before we get into that, I'll make sure I bring it back so we don't so we keep it a wee bit structured, Ross, today.
Sure.
So when it comes to, I guess, the education side of things, especially in California, is there anything within that area that you recommend anyone to go to, or not necessarily recommend, but is there any like places for artists, like events or anything, or things that kind of stood out to you? If not, it's
I
not from at all.
Yeah. It's not anything against around where I lived, but I never really found anything
Mm-hmm.
that was 3D art related in person that
Okay.
I could go to. There were a lot of filmmaking events and things like that around Sacramento because filmmaking and indie filmmaking is relatively prominent in Sacramento. So there are like expos. There's a lot of film festivals. I've judged film festivals. I've gone to a lot of film festivals, and like that's not really the same thing, but it's kind of closer to what we both do.
Yeah.
Um, and so I would say that's the closest thing I could find in the area.
Mm-hmm.
So if anybody wants to go to the Sacramento area or has been to the Sacramento area or lives in the Sacramento area,
Mm-hmm.
there are a lot of really cool film festivals that you should check out. I don't remember the names of them off the top of my head.
That's okay.
It was about 5 years ago. I don't
That's all right.
remember. But anyway, yeah,
No, that's perfect. No, because I always like to ask, because you never know. It always helps to kind of spread the word of every like that's my mission. Cover every city in the world.
right.
I've got many more to go, but we're getting there. But at the end of the day, because over here in Scotland, it's got a lot better, but it's still like just like it is anywhere. Like it depends. Like city size, you
Yeah,
name it. You said right at the start,
definitely.
studio wise, like when it comes to games, especially in Scotland, it's always Edinburgh or Dundee. Whereas, and then in England, it's like obviously in England you're pretty spoilt for choice, which is great.
Yeah, there are a lot of options there.
You could go like I think Manchester, Leeds, London,
Pretty much
Birmingham.
everywhere.
Every city has like a big studio. You're like, I guess if you
Yeah,
guys want to travel, might as well go to England or
yeah.
America. You guys got great opportunities in America. It just depends though. I think in certain
Very
cities.
specific locations, there are
Yeah.
a lot of things. Like when I was applying for a bunch of jobs, the most common places I saw for studios
Mm-hmm.
were um, like Washington, Seattle area. There's
Right.
so many studios up there
Yeah.
in Washington. There's even like a Nintendo US studio. There's a bunch of stuff.
Nice.
Another one that I noticed there are a lot of actually is various larger cities in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
So like Frisco, Texas, Austin. There are places like Arcane
Okay.
who have their main HQ there. And then they also have an HQ in France. But um, there are places like that, and then there's a lot on the East Coast. I haven't actually noticed that many in New York or super large areas like that, but
Yeah.
they just kind of seem to be peppered all over the place. I think there's like a New England Rockstar studio somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
probably like Massachusetts or something like that.
Yeah.
But then, of course, if you go north, there's a ton in Toronto, like in Canada and Toronto and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Completely. Like Canada is like that's another place. It's
Canada's
like
packed with them.
it's literally just flooded. Like I know so many people have literally just moved to Canada because of literally the industry is booming over there.
Yeah, a few of my coworkers worked in the animation industry
Mm-hmm.
as lighting artists and other various things in Vancouver for a really long time,
Yeah.
uh, and they really liked it. But they also, like, one of them was telling me that their entire apartment complex was all other 3D artists,
Well, okay. What's the
and it
chances?
happened to be like that because it was right next to the studio they were all working at.
Yeah,
It's
literally like
wild.
living. You're literally how can I say it, like you're non-stop 3D. It's like you're in your house surrounded by artists. You just cross the road surrounded by artists.
Yeah,
Move back. That's your circle for life. Don't leave it.
pretty crazy.
Because like one other thing you said, which before we get into the art, I found that just surprised me when you said that about New York. Because when I think about it, I've never heard of a studio. It's probably just because I've not researched into it enough. But I don't know any studios in New York.
Probably.
I've never heard of any of studios in New York, whether it's game or film related.
Yeah, I would suspect there are probably quite a bit of film studios. I just can't
Yeah,
think of any. There are a lot of VFX studios all over. They seem
yeah,
to be pretty common. But nothing specifically in the New York area.
yeah.
That's very
Because
strange.
nothing stands out to me. Perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, what a way to start the podcast. This is really awesome. So let's get into the more fun stuff. Let's actually talk about the man's art himself. I said to you at the start, I wanted to talk about this piece because it was the piece that literally I saw it as like as always, you're scrolling through ArtStation, you just see the piece that catches your eye, and this piece that we're talking about, you guys will see it on screen. It is his sunken piece. We're going to be diving into a few of Alec's work today and cover a few amazing points that he's raised through articles and through descriptions, etc. You name it, and it's going to be a fun one. So enjoy. So first of all, just what was the inspiration behind the sunken piece? Like, what kind of What was the reasoning behind that? What was there any reason? Like, what was like the ambition for that?
Um, yeah, so that actually has a really interesting backstory because it was one of the pieces that I made that was inspired by something in my actual life that
Mm-hmm.
happened. So I've had a friend since childhood who has loved making model planes
Yeah.
and who in the military right now and working for a military company right now as his career. And he's always loved like World War II era aircraft.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to the extent that he knows everything you could possibly know about
Oh,
everything.
cool.
And he started doing these crafts where he would make a diorama of sunken planes at the bottom of the ocean and then pour resin over it to make it look like it was submerged in water.
Oh, nice.
They're really cool. And when I moved over here, he gave me one,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a A6M0, exactly like what I made.
Yeah.
And I told him this would be a really great 3D environment to make, so I'm gonna try and make one
Yeah.
based off of this. And so from then, I mean, it took probably 8 months for me to actually get the motivation to finish it. But
Mm-hmm.
um, for like a month, I just worked on this one project, and yeah, so it was completely inspired by a real life event that happened to me with my gift from my friend. So
Yeah.
it's
That's,
really interesting.
oh, totally. Like, I think it's really nice. I think those are the best projects because it's the same with your the other projects you've worked on as well. And then when I saw the Castaway, I thought we'll talk about that one as well because there's so many challenges that you came across that. But when it comes to the sunken piece, this is something I've never been able to ask anyone on the podcast. I've never had the chance. What was it like having to get the illusion of water? Like what was that kind of approach? Because
That was
encompassing
very,
lighting, yeah, I would like to hear about it. What was the
oh, it's
struggles?
very, very difficult. I've found that there are three elements that really sold it for me, at least,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm really picky about the underwater look, and I've seen other projects that, in my opinion, didn't like nail the water, the
Mm-hmm.
hazy underwater look. And the three elements that I found worked were your fog. Your exponential height fog needs to be tuned in a specific way where closer to you needs to be a different color than further away from you
Mm-hmm.
due to like atmospheric haze underwater, and things like that. And then you also need to take into consideration the depth that you're trying to make it appear at.
Yeah.
So if you want to see the water's like the surface, then that changes everything involving the lighting because you need to add the caustics, you need to add um, moving caustics, kind of like I did that in my piece just because I wanted to give it the illusion that it was within 100 feet
Mm-hmm.
from the
Definitely.
surface. But the second main thing that I noticed helps a lot is adding debris in the water and floating dust pieces because the
Nice.
like ocean water is never just going to be completely clear,
Mm-hmm.
especially with ocean currents and things like that happening. And so the two things, the particles, which I just did like dust particles, and then also bubbles.
Right.
So
Cool.
there are
Loving
many,
it.
many objects underwater that produce bubbles or things like that. And so having bubbles, I just made bubble emitters,
Mm-hmm.
and just placed them all over the places to give it more life. But bubbles and dust help a lot with atmosphere
Yeah.
because it gives you depth, it gives you a little bit of movement if you want to do like a moving shot,
Mm-hmm.
things like that. And then what was the third thing I was going to say? Oh, the third thing is just overall um, color of your lighting.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually kept the lights almost white. Like I turned them slightly to the cooler side, but for the most part, it was just white because the light going through the water ended up kind of if I made the lights excuse me, if I made the lights blue,
Mm-hmm.
and then brought it through blue fog, it just turned out too blue, and you need to retain the colors of whatever models and
Yeah.
foliage you have in there. And so the only way to do that is to keep the lighting fairly neutral colored,
Yeah.
because if you turn everything blue, everything will be blue, and it doesn't really work.
Yeah.
So you have to keep some colors and blend some colors with the blue of everything else, if that makes sense.
Oh
Because
my god, this is so
if you
cool.
see if you see underwater photos, there's a lot of green, yellow, and blue, but mostly green, I
Mm-hmm.
noticed. And so you have to kind of like figure out how shadows work, I
Yeah,
guess, for
of
being
course.
underwater, because technically there is one light source still, which is the sun, but there's still ambient light approaching it from all other sides.
Mm-hmm.
So you need a lot of fill light. That's
Oh
pretty much
my lord, this is
it. Secret,
amazing. I was about to say
secret
this is.
recipe.
Oh, I was about to say this is epic. No pun intended. I love it. This is so awesome already. Oh my gosh! Right, what a podcast. I'm loving it. So when it comes to like for example, I was going to say. So when I saw this piece, you're going to be like Ross. This is so cliche, but it's not. But when I saw your piece, right, it just made me think Pearl Harbor. Like, do you know the scene
Yeah.
when he first it crashes and they think he's dead, and it's like it's right beside like it's just the right depth and it's the way like you capture the lighting like you said, but it's like I would never thought all of that in a million years like all these things that actually made it believable because one of my friends was like he was trying to decide what project to do for his first ever environment and he
Mhm.
actually chose to do a water piece and I thought that as a first
So
project seemed
very
crazy.
challenging. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
like I thought it was just insane and I saw what he did and he was able to capture just like you it felt right and you just nailed it there because I wasn't thinking clearly because I haven't done it but it's getting that contrast right with the elements that tells the story but most importantly guides the viewer and makes us relate to the piece etc you name it all these things at once so when it comes to this piece I guess like I know you said those are like the three things when it comes to this piece, is there anything that you think you would change? Like, obviously, I think it's amazing. Like, but I have no idea how to do it. But is there anything that maybe when it comes to water, etc., you could have improved on?
Um, with water, I was considering doing this when I made it, but then I chose not to.
Mm-hmm.
But I was considering doing an alternate version where I would use sequencer to make an actual like animated shot that showed the actual plane sinking slowly to the bottom of the ocean and then landing there. And
Right.
it was like a cleaner version of the model because this one's obviously been there a little bit longer, but
Mm-hmm.
a cleaner version of the model and then having dust and stuff kick up and I realized I would have to learn something like Houdini or something like that
Yeah.
to get good fluids going, and then add them in. But I guess if I were to spend like another month on this and re-release it or add it
Mm-hmm.
to the project, it would probably just be to make some kind of cinematic with it.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah,
Nah, that's
and that,
cool.
it would sell the kind of lower gravity underwater look, I
Mm-hmm.
would say. So
Perfect. Because like when like also I know this is another contrast I'm gonna say, but like when it came to like Pearl Harbor, the other one as well. When I saw this, it's got to be Finding Nemo. It's got to be like
yeah, the color scheme is very similar. I actually that was one of the inspirations. That and
yeah,
Uncharted 4.
yeah. All right, okay, good. Oh, good choice, good choice. Because
Yeah.
when it comes to like when the first time I ever saw Finding Nemo, it's like a bit of a random topic to talk about, but amazing
Oh,
film.
it's okay.
We've got to talk about
Yeah.
because amazing film. Got to love Disney, Pixar, and DreamWorks. All these studios is like they make it realistic, but also not. If you know what I mean, and it's getting that. And I think that's obviously it's a challenge in itself. Like especially when it comes to me anything that kind of hints on an element of stylized, I really struggle at. Like, especially when it comes to just stylized art, especially when it comes to like sculpting stylized, I
Me as well.
hardest thing of all time.
It's very difficult.
It's just a whole other world, but I think it's you learn so much from it, and like when it comes to like you said about inspiration, and you just said there like you touched on like Finding Nemo as a reference source as well is there anything that could that kind of stands out in terms of like what's the value from observing I guess stylized versus realism is there anything that kind of like what separates them and then also what makes them work together I know that's a very in-depth
Oh,
question but
that's a good question. I wanted this scene to have. I didn't necessarily want it to be photoreal. I wanted it to be kind of larger than life.
mm-hmm.
With brighter and more saturated colors
Yeah,
all around. And so because of that, I thought Finding Nemo was a really good reference because the colors are just the colors pop in that movie. All the
yeah,
color color schemes they choose for the characters interacting with the environment and the environment itself are just very visually appealing. Um, and so with color, I really like saving concept art and saving stills from animated movies for color schemes specifically because their
Mm-hmm.
colors are just always on point. Like um, Moana has beautiful
Yep.
colors, or like other movies with the ocean have beautiful colors. And so I guess I just derive my color schemes more from stylized pieces, but
Mm-hmm.
then have fidelity closer to photoreal pieces.
Perfect. What an answer. Because when I was obviously doing my research, and when I saw that you did filming early on in your career, in terms of that was the original passion for yours until you realized it was games. Like like when I see your artwork, like I see, like, how can I say it? It's like, first of all, this is going to sound weird, but it's perfect in the sense, like, it's so complete. Everything makes sense. I love the color that you make, and like, everything just works so well. And like cinematography and understanding what's going on, uh, even better, like understanding camera lenses and the reason for all these different types of lenses, and atmosphere, you name it, giving mood. Like, how, like, what have you learned from cinematography, and like how's that been such a big part in your artwork?
I oh man, that's a hard question to answer. Um,
It's like,
I
where do I even start, Ross?
what I usually yeah, man. Um, with my scenes, uh, the thing that I consider film and using Unreal similar
Mm-hmm.
is that with my scenes, I try and get physical human size to feel right in the space, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I want them to be immersive, and part of something being immersive is having a believable size and believable depth. And so um, with film, everything obviously is the correct scale because they're
Mm-hmm.
real objects you're using for props, and they're real people that are the correct height, and light behaves the correct way because of the scale of everything and things like that. So locking everything down to more realistic sizing
Mm-hmm.
helps a lot with Unreal pieces. Obviously, if you're making an extremely large scale scene, that kind of gets thrown out the window.
Okay.
But
Interesting.
for this one, it's like this is a human sized, or an aircraft that has a human in it, and so it has the all of the props in it have to be believable with the size of a human.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just like it's just scale cues, I guess.
Yeah.
And with with cinematography, you still think about that while framing because you need to help the story in a way. If you want somebody to appear more powerful, you need to make everything else smaller than that person,
Yeah.
or vice versa. And so it's kind of like a psychological gut reaction that you get.
Yeah.
Like with cinematography, I would frame an image, and then I would, whatever psychological gut reaction I would get from it,
Mm-hmm.
I would assess if that worked for the story or not. And so, what's a good example? So, for instance, have you ever seen the show Mr. Robot?
Oh, it's so good. I've not seen the last season though.
Okay,
I
it's
still
okay.
haven't
I
seen
haven't
it.
either. I haven't
Oh,
either.
phew,
Um,
perfect.
So, but I brought that show up because they intentionally frame the characters at kind of an off kilter, slightly at the very, very far thirds of the frame
Okay.
to make them appear more disconnected from other people, if that makes sense. So they use wider lenses and are closer um, to make the viewer feel uncomfortable.
Right.
And
Interesting.
so using your focal length and using how high or low the camera is and all of these very seemingly basic cinematography techniques just
Mm-hmm.
overall helps sell the mood.
Yeah.
Uh, and so I just make a checklist of every possible thing I can do to sell the mood of something.
Yeah.
And that means sometimes going and finding reference of that being executed correctly, or even things that I've done myself with photos. Sometimes I use that as reference. Yeah, pretty much
Amazing.
just
No,
psychological responses to images just kind of drive everything for me. That makes
perfect.
sense.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, because like, we're gonna dive into it later as well. But it's like your Forgotten Lands piece. Like, it was just like, like, I felt like I was in the shot, because it's like, because obviously the composition is like, like you just want to go to the fog at the end, like you're just like moving into, you're just like I could tell I'm there, and it's being able to have that ability to make the viewer connect with the piece is like it's the thing that separates the great artists from people who are clearly still learning and stuff. Obviously, we're always learning all the time, but that's
Definitely.
what I think makes your work stand out so well. Like speaking of what you said there about lenses and what you learned from Mr. Robot, like can you tell me, because I have no idea what any of this means. Could
Sure.
you kind of dive into what like aperture, oval, etc., and hexagon? Is it hexagonal lenses mean? Or could you like
So
speak about the lenses
sure.
of art?
So there's a bunch of different lenses for photography or film.
Mm-hmm.
Film lenses are often different than photography lenses, but um, all of this aperture and other settings for cameras uh, are inform the ultimate look of whatever photo you're taking. So it depends on how bright your surroundings are. It depends on if you want to show motion blur or if you don't want to show motion blur, depending
Mm-hmm.
on what you're shooting. Um, let's see. With film, there are different like physical shapes of lenses. So you can have what are called anamorphic lenses, which shoot at an aspect ratio that's much wider than a lot of other ones because it physically stretches your image and it gets
Yeah.
very nice. It produces very nice background blur and bokeh. Um, I'm not sure exactly what else. So just like
No, that's
basic
fine.
photography, kind of
Yeah,
like.
yeah.
And then you can also invoke a mood with different shutter speeds. With movies, a higher shutter speed often makes it look more jerky because there's less
Okay.
motion blur, and it can cause viewers to be more uneasy. People seem to use it a lot during fight scenes because it makes all of the movement and aggressiveness like accentuated because it makes
Mm-hmm.
all the people feel like they're moving faster,
Yeah.
which is really interesting. So you have to just kind of know what tools are at your disposal with
Mm-hmm.
cameras and then make decisions based on what you want the ultimate thing to feel like,
Perfect.
kind of.
So, this is so interesting. I'm really glad we're talking about this. So, when when it comes to say we've got a night scene and a day scene, does when it comes to the camera side of things, does the lenses change? I assume the answer would probably be it depends, but does
It
which
very
is
much depends.
yeah,
Um, with photography, I like to go more of a natural lighting setup, so I don't ever
right,
set up lights to um, do anything. So if I'm photographing something at night versus at day, I would probably use a different lens that would fit better for that, that could perform better in low light
mm-hmm.
with better results. Uh, with film stuff, you have the ability to bring lighting kits and light your scenes how you want. And so I would say it matters less so than if you're trying to do basic photography,
Mm-hmm.
because you can brighten up a scene that's pitch black to have to be almost as exposed as daylight or indoors during daylight. So it highly depends on what you want from it. If
Yeah,
that makes
yeah.
sense.
No, no,
And
that's an amazing
if you're
answer.
planning on going with a natural lighting setup, or if you're going with like a 3-point lighting setup and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
So it
yeah.
highly depends on what you want.
Nice. No, I was expecting it because I like I wasn't sure what you were going to say, but I'm really glad you've dived into that because once again, like I said, I've never been able to talk about this, and I don't know why I've never really really thought about it because I literally I did my first masterclass, like I said, what day is it now? So this week,
Friday.
I keep dude, I'm in that moment. I'm pretty sure there's so many people listening now.
Yeah.
There was a moment, right? Like I was a whole 5 days behind. I
Yeah.
was that bad. I was like, what is like? I
It's
thought
been
the
it's been
Monday was
rough.
Friday. It's mental.
Yeah. There are days where I wake up in the morning and go to work and or not go to work, but
Yeah,
go to sit at my computer and work from home.
yeah.
And I just completely forget what day it is.
Yeah.
And some days I think it's a Friday, but it's actually a Tuesday and all this crazy stuff.
It's
It's
so
just
weird, eh?
losing all concept of time. It's so bad.
It's like the one thing that's helped me is like this is like really Ross. Oh my gosh! Like, all the things that's worked is just by going outside has helped you. But yes, it is like just going outside has
Oh
literally
yeah.
changed everything. But it's been such a like it's been so weird. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
But speaking of this, like the as we're continuing this topic, so when it comes to your artwork and stuff, there's one thing, especially when I saw your Forgotten Lands piece, was something you said was super interesting, and I remember hearing it a long time ago. But I guess I kind of got sidetracked when it came to my artwork. Like I stopped really thinking about certain elements in this way, and it was a really good phrase that you said was making the piece kind of feel more ambiguous. So making the not necessarily giving the answer straight away, and like how important do you think that is in artwork? Like, I understand people like to kind of be not necessarily always straight to the point, but having more than just that one story.
I think it again, it depends on what
Yeah.
you're trying to convey with your art, but with the Forgotten Lands, I just wanted the viewer to immediately not know what was going on, but
Mm-hmm.
have a very vague understanding of what could have gone on.
Yeah.
And so every element of that, I I assessed and I said, is this giving away too much information or not enough information?
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to balance it right in the middle where it gives you enough information to have a vague understanding of things like there is a skeleton meaning somebody died and
Yeah.
you don't know why and you don't know how, and there are more skeletons hanging in the background meaning people were put in those. Why did somebody get put in those and why is it where it is?
Yeah.
And so I tried to make the questions asked and questions answered ratio to be more towards more questions asked than answered,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Definitely.
So instead of it being a completely like every single thing about this can be explained by looking at it, I would rather, or for this piece, I made it so people could fill in the blanks and
Mm-hmm.
kind of interpret it in their own way
Yeah.
based on whatever was on their mind at the time.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really interesting because some people thought it was very medieval, and other people thought it was like straight up hell, and other
Yeah.
people just didn't really have an idea of the time period that it was supposed to be set in.
Yeah.
Some people thought it was a Dark Souls fan art, and
Yeah.
I never once thought about that when I was making it. But if
Okay.
that's what
Interesting.
people interpret from it, I find that really interesting.
Like, do you want to, like this is even cooler, right? So this is so I love this. So when you see like, this is the beauty about art is everyone's interpretation is so different. So when I saw this piece, right, I thought King Kong.
Interesting. Actually, other people also said that. Yeah,
That's what I thought. Like it
this,
was,
this scene with the insects at the bottom of the
yeah,
crevice. Yeah,
and then
I love that.
it was, and also, oh, I don't know what you call it. Native? Well, probably not natives, but do you like in Peter Jackson's King Kong when they're first on the island and they're first meeting the people who live
Oh,
there, and there's that kind of stone vibe, kind of claustrophobic, kind of almost, how can I say it? Like there's so much going on because like the buildings were all kind of like there wasn't really a structure to the city. It was kind of just,
right.
and it was just like the look, like the way you kind of lit it as well was very interesting in the sense that the color palette was like the color palette was so awesome. Like I love the way you color graded it. And it's
Oh,
like I don't know what you did, but like when it comes to the color grading, like that's another topic. But like, what was it like, kind of trying to get this mood across? Like, what was it? Was it like very challenging, or like because I know that was
sure.
kind of one of your main focuses.
It took almost a week to settle on what color palette I wanted and
Mm-hmm.
what the post processing was going to look like.
Yeah.
With almost everything I make, I try and emulate like film stock colors just
Yeah.
because I really like the look of film and it makes it feel more immersive and realistic to me than just doing like generic teal and orange color palette like
Yeah.
some action movies are and stuff like that people
Definitely.
attribute to the film look. So I actually brought it into I exported the image with almost no colors other than the color of the light, which was just white.
Mm-hmm.
And I imported it into a mobile app called uh, Visco, VSCO
Okay.
Cam, and it's a photo editing app that has Instagram-like filters, kind of, that you can apply to it, and all of these filters are based on actual film stock. And so I just applied anything that looked remotely good. I just applied it
Mm-hmm.
and put all of the images up on my screen, and I went through pros and cons for every single one until I settled on something that felt right.
Yeah. Awesome.
Um,
That's so cool.
yeah, and I really like the color scheme I chose because um, the obviously the cooler part of the image, as in color temperature cooler,
Mm-hmm.
so was the further away area with all of the fog, and that felt like the least comforting part of the image, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then the closer to the camera it was, the more comforting it was, meaning
Yeah.
I used a warmer brownish color to be more like homey and comfortable, even though the whole thing is not homey and comfortable. But
Yeah.
it's more homey and comfortable than further down the line where you can't see past the fog. And so even with the colors, I tried to make the viewer uneasy. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it worked, so I'm gonna try and do that more
Oh,
in the future. Yeah.
it's so good. Like the top image was like all the images are really strong, and it was just like I said, like you feel a part of the image. And when I was studying, I've always tried to think in that way at least, or at least try and make it feel more like I don't know. Like I see so much art pieces. Like for example, when I'm doing props, my problem on my side of things I do with the rendering is I focus purely on the detail of the prop. So, for example, I've just posted a chair literally yesterday on ArtStation, and like my focus was literally just to focus on the sculpt. Like, just I want people just to see the sculpt. That's priority
Right.
number one.
Right.
But when it comes to like environments and stuff, like the full scale, like the actual story aspect, really making like all these elements come into play a lot more because I feel color is still I'm not sure what you think. I still feel like color and all this theory stuff is underappreciated or not focused on enough.
Definitely. It's very true. I completely agree.
I don't know. I like it also translates over to like sketching as well. Like I know it's just like for example when I was studying animation, like I had so much passion for storyboarding and giving everything pure reason, like actually understanding things like what's going on, like every nooks and crannies and it's like you see so many generic like for example a very cliche project of mine is the Martian project so I made
Yeah.
a
I just
sci-fi yeah, so that's awesome. That's fine. Like I love making it, but once again, it's figuring out right. So this project I've made is cliche, so that's why when I did my train piece, I knew it was time to switch it up and figure out how could I get more of a actual uh, truly understanding of what makes something an art piece rather than just making it just an image, like just as in just like right, this is a train, yada yada yada. Like what could actually make it sell it more. For example, you did the same thing with your piece, so adding fog, understanding atmosphere, understanding lighting. I dived into cameras, and that's why I wanted to talk to you about cameras so much today because I thought
Right.
cameras was so important. Like cameras was literally the it was like the changing moment of my whole career. Like it was because of cameras that got me my first job. But
Wow.
believe it or not, because I had two images, right, the same composition, same scene, but different camera settings, and one looked like it was 2 years behind the other. Yet all it was different camera settings. Like I was
Wow.
focusing on like focal length, etc. And I watched. Have you ever heard of Devin Fay?
I have not.
Like he's highly recommend to check out because I think you'll love him based on like your art style. Highly recommend because he did a series that I watched called the Noman Workshop. So it was Devin Fay and Jeremy Vickery. So Jeremy Vickery
I've
is
heard of Jeremy actually.
I love Jeremy's Vickery's work. It's he was the lead lighting artist for Disney DreamWorks for like years, I think decades, and he's done like breakdowns, same as Devin Fay of like camera, color theory, um, not just like your basic composition, but like just like everything that makes a strong piece like so much better. And like just to kind of summarize this topic that we're talking about, because we were talking about color grading and stuff. Like color grading is like you can make like one scene like five different scenes like suddenly change just through color grading. Like
Yeah,
you can go
absolutely.
crazy about it. Like, is there any like tips like maybe you could give artists when it comes to, I guess, the post processing side of things? Because obviously, like, we tend to like, I know I make the mistake of going a bit too crazy with post processing. Like,
Right.
what have you learned through your experience?
I with most projects, I have a color palette in mind, which I either find from some kind of any art that I find, I just like save the image and I just put it in a folder.
Mm-hmm.
And if I really like the colors of it, even if the subject matter has nothing to do with what I'm planning on making, if I have those colors, I can kind of use that as a guideline for how I light my scene.
Mm-hmm.
So with post processing, I don't know if a lot of other people do this, but it seems like I'm in the minority with this, but I actually start post processing at the very beginning when I'm putting together my camera angles and things like that, and when I
Okay.
start lighting. So the reason I do that is because then I'm in a position where the post processing and the colors inform how I make the scene instead of me making the scene and then adding the colors after, if that makes sense. So
Okay.
I'm making the scene to accentuate the colors that were put in place at the beginning, if
Yep.
that makes sense. So I'm almost like making the scene for the color palette instead of making the color palette for the scene.
Wait. So
That's kind of interesting, but
so do you? Sorry to cut you off there. I wasn't trying to be rude.
it's okay. Go for it. Yeah, no worries.
So do you mean like how can I say it? I got a very slow brain.
Oh no, it's okay. It's okay. It was
So
pretty vague, so
no. It was really cool, really interesting. It's so basically, so say for example, I've got an image. So if I do, so what I normally do is pretty sure what everyone, what a lot of people do. I'll get my image, bring it into Photoshop, and then break it down layer by layer. So are you saying that layer by layer part is basically complete at the start, and then you know basically in Unreal
right.
that's going to look more right in the actual
So
environment?
I guess what I mean is my workflow is kind of very specific to Unreal.
Okay,
It might
nice,
it
nice.
might not work as much with other things, but what I mean is if I have my color palette looking in front of or sitting in front of me, I can put in my like when I'm blocking out a scene, I can put in all of the colors into the scene through lights, so I at least have the primary colors of the scene. Then if I want any other colors added to it, I can apply a LUT or add colors to the post processing volume in Unreal
Mm-hmm.
before I've even made the scene. And so now I know that darker values will be blue or lighter values will be whatever color I want it to be
Yeah,
throughout the entire thing instead of making the scene without thinking about color and then at the end
yeah.
assigning the darker values to blue and vice versa. I don't I
That's,
don't know if
that's
that
perfect.
makes full
No,
sense, but
that's even better. No, thanks for saying that because I'm gonna start doing that. That's way better. Like yes, obviously when I'm working away, I'm thinking of color and that, but I'm not thinking of it enough. And I feel that when you're saying that, it's not only does it make more sense, but it gives things more reason, and it means that everything's going to just work better. Like for example, when you were doing the Castaway piece, I remember reading you were saying that you were going for a certain feel, so you didn't want it to be too kind of like you wanted it to be a wee bit, how can I say it, more natural, or how I'm trying to think like how would you say the
yeah.
Castaway piece in terms of the post processing and lighting is different to, I guess, trying to think what piece is more contrast. Maybe the Sunken piece. Would you say they're completely different in terms of like?
I would say so. So the sunken piece was more of like an over exaggerated artistic color palette
Mm-hmm.
and like I lifted up the darker values to give it kind of a matted look and I decreased the brightness of the highlights so it was kind of like a compressed
Mm-hmm.
dynamic range, and I thought that that worked better for something that was underwater where the sun wasn't just directly hitting it, it was going through a filter, which is the water. So I just kind of thought of it in a logical way of what would affect the brightness and colors. And so with Castaway, I went for more like bringing out the natural colors of everything in the scene instead
Mm-hmm.
of bringing out color through post processing, because the scene is about being on the island. And I felt if I were to do like an Instagram filter over this, it would feel less like it was on the island and more like I was on vacation on the island.
Yeah. Right.
And
Okay.
it's supposed to be somebody stranded on the island, so you're there, so you
Yeah.
feel like you're there, and I want the viewer to feel like they're seeing it as if they're the person on the island.
Yeah.
So I tried to push that further by making it colors that would be how it would appear instead of an artistic depiction, I guess.
Awesome. Really cool. Cause wow. Right. Okay. Sweet. Cause when I saw the pieces as well, like the one thing I think is always really nice to see is the chromatic aberration. Is that how do you say it? Chromatic aberration. How do you say it again? I always mispronounce it.
Chromatic aberration.
That's the
Yeah,
one. Perfect. Like adding that into people's shots, it just makes it so much more alive. And then speaking of what you just said there, I thought that was wow, that was really cool because the shot that you've got that is looking on the island that shows. I'll actually bring it up because then I'll be able to explain it a wee bit
sure.
more on my side of things. Let's have a look. Okay, Art Station. Make sure to follow Alec Tucker, by the way. Art Station, Alec Tucker. Link in description. Right, let's see. Because this shot was literally what you just said there that made so much sense, and it's those small differences that go such a long way. So let's see which one. One, two. Where's the big one? Actually, yeah, we'll go with the one that says help.
Oh yeah,
So the one that says help. So this disagree with me if you need to, but this is what I was thinking. When you said there about the Instagram thing is when we like, for example, once again, when I see your work, it literally goes back to the piece. You have the ability of making it so like alive and making us feel that we're there. And I think touching on the point that you said there, it's like it's not over like you don't over exaggerate things. Like I understand that obviously you're getting your reference and you're trying to make it feel like the film because it's such an iconic film. Like everyone, like so many people have seen this film based off because obviously Tom Hanks is a legend, and
right.
it's like for example the mistake I would have made is what you said there. Like I would have went too crazy with colors. I would have been trying to go through layering palettes etc. in Photoshop, trying to figure out how to make it maybe stand out a wee bit more. Maybe I would have gone a bit too extreme with the settings on the cameras and stuff, but it's being able to know when to dial it back, and I think like that's one of the things that we as artists could learn so much from just looking at your work.
Yeah. I don't remember who told me this, but I've kind of lived by it since this person told me. But
Mm-hmm.
somebody mentioned with pretty much anything you're doing with art stuff, dial it up to 11, way past what it should be, and
Okay.
then dial it back until it feels right instead of the other way around, because you need to know what the limit is, and you won't know the limit if you only go to a certain point and then go up.
Mm-hmm.
So if you crank the colors, crank the saturation, crank the contrast, you'll see that that doesn't work, and then you'll have a threshold of where it could work.
Yeah.
So with this scene, I just did that with every possible facet of it that I could. I did it with the brightness of the lights. I did it with the post processing. I did it with the colors, everything.
Mm-hmm.
I at one point it was way more saturated, way more contrasty. Um, it looked terrible, but I then knew now I need to tone it back, and then
Mm-hmm.
I toned it back to a certain point, and it just looked right to me.
So, um, when you I guess are observing reference and trying to get like the correct reference, do you? So I've only been doing this since I finished uni, so in the last 3 or 4 years. I obviously you always want to get the best reference you can,
Right.
but do you think through your ability to, or through your practice of this, so actually diving into this, can you like, how can I say it, like go into Google and know what's been over exaggerated? Yes, I understand that a lot of people, like you always see like the overly photoshopped contrast or whatever it may be, filters like you said. Like I always think it'd be super important if more artists could like know what's actually right. Like obviously pick. I don't know what people will say pick the right reference, but like being able to develop that visual eye, is that being like is that like second nature for you now? Like, can you tell what's been like over exaggerated just through all this like practicing that?
I would say more or less, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when I go onto Google Images or Pinterest or whatever I'm using for reference at the time,
Yeah.
I can I can at least go through images. Like for instance, this the Castaway piece is based on a real island, obviously, because that's where they filmed it for the movie. And
Yeah.
so instead of searching for movie stills, I searched for pictures of the island that tourists took.
Yeah.
And because of that, I got a lot of unedited phone pictures or compact digital camera pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And so, surprisingly, the colors almost always lined up with each other, even if they were from different people.
Mm-hmm.
And I just took that as a baseline of this is kind of how the island and the colors are supposed to look. So I'm going to base everything off of this.
Yeah.
There are obviously certain images that were like had the HDR filter applied in Photoshop, or the saturation is turned up way too high, and I could see that based on having all of the other reference. So I guess if you gather enough reference, which you should be gathering like at least 50 images or more for a lot of things,
Yeah.
in my opinion, because it gives you the ability to kind of make a baseline average of what the look of something should be,
Mm-hmm.
and then go off of that, I guess. So with this, I had all of the images of the island where I would consider to be what it should look like in real life, and then I had a few images that were like stylistic depictions of tropical islands, like Moana or like Uncharted 4 during the sequence where you're
Mm-hmm.
driving a boat around.
Yeah.
I had those in an artistic folder because those are not realistic, but more of an artistic depiction. And so I just kind of went back and forth between the two and just dialed in the look until it looked right.
Awesome. Wow. Sweet. Because this kind of reminds me. I'm not sure if you've watched it. Did you watch the making of God of War? So
Um, yeah, the hour long documentary
yeah,
raising Kratos.
yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
did watch that. That was fantastic.
Oh, it's so good. Like there was. Do you remember there was a scene there? There was also a talk by Noman. So they had two guys at Noman doing a talk. They were talking about Iceland and getting the reference for all the rocks, etc. And
Hmm.
then going to one of the points you just said there that I thought was really cool was the reason why the God of War looks like the way it is that they were kind of looking like they were aiming for the same color grading and same look as Conan the Barbarian.
Oh
So
yeah,
they were like trying to figure out how to kind of get that. Like, is there a word for it? I'm not sure. Well, that kind of period of, you know what I mean? Like they were trying to get. I think it was like Conan. What's that? Oh, what's it called? Never Ending Story. If you remember
oh yeah,
that,
yeah.
that was their two inspirations for the feel of God of War. And when I saw that, I thought that was so nice because naturally yes, people will say and everyone will know who's listening on the podcast that it's obviously just second nature. We all go outside, we look well, this is for artists anyway, we look at the ground everywhere. Like I'm looking at my rug right now and it's awesome. I love it. Alex just turns his face, he's looking down as well.
Yeah, I have hardwood floor.
Awesome. We love it. We love everything that surrounds us. We're constantly observing things. It's what defines us as artists. But
Yeah,
it was like, that was super interesting. And that just came to my mind when you were saying about looking at the film side of things. And this is why I think it's such a great podcast. It's been a pleasure having you on as well. Like talking
thank
about
you.
all these theory side of things, the reasoning for it, and actually like because like I said, it's something I'm still miles behind. Like I can still go way further in terms of my development that, but I think it's something that's not talked enough about. And everyone who's we're going to be diving into the fun crazy section, by the way. I've not forgotten this
Fun,
part.
crazy. Oh boy.
Bunch of random questions, you name it. As always, everybody knows the section. It's 500 seconds, even though it technically never is because I always go on a tangent, as always. But then again, it makes the podcast more entertaining. But as always, make sure to give Alec a follow. You'll be seeing his social media right now on screen. I'm just going to make sure. Oh, wait, actually, there's one last thing I want to talk about before we get into it, if that's okay. Right, this was a really interesting one. Uh, this is a bit kind of big question as well. How important has investing into like assets and stuff to make scenes been in your kind of in career in
Ooh,
terms of development? I know
that's a good one.
like how is that? Because I know for some of your environments, quote me if I'm wrong. Was it like Epic Store or wait what?
Yeah.
Okay.
So for instance, with the Forgotten Lands piece,
Mm-hmm.
I before making it, I decided to try and only use free Unreal Marketplace assets.
Right.
So Unreal, every month they give out a few packs of stuff like various plugins or assets and stuff like that, and I've just been accumulating them month by month.
Sweet.
Uh, and I just have like an asset library of various stuff, some of which I like, some of which I don't like at all. But
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of like look at all these packs and think, what can I build with it? And I
Mm-hmm.
just kind of went that direction, kind of just like Lego blocks. You're like, oh, I have these Lego pieces and I have these colors. What can I make with it? And then you
Mm-hmm.
just kind of go with what you have. And I actually really liked that because um, I didn't have to worry about all the specific technical stuff with making the assets
Yep.
and worry about my artistic ability with modeling and things
Mm-hmm.
like that. Instead, I just worried about the ultimate mood of the scene. I'm probably going to do it again, just
Nice.
another marketplace asset only
Per-
thing. I just find it really fun.
perfect.
But usually with modeling stuff, I try and get as far as I can with other assets like megascans or other things like that. But then with most of my scenes, there's like a very specific story related prop or multiple story related props, and I want to make those myself because that's the most important part of the scene.
Mm-hmm.
So I usually just model those or model anything that I can't possibly find, I guess.
Yeah.
But I try not to go like overboard where every single object is made by somebody else unless I own it and say that everything is marketplace assets.
Yeah.
So it varies project to project.
Nice. Because it's always cool seeing people actually giving this a go. Like for example, take who's a great example that I've learned from. Like there's so many people that have done it. Nothing's coming to mind, but there's so many artists that do it, and I
Yeah.
think it's super important. Bit of a random question, but say you get these assets. Has that helped develop your eye through them being finished and complete, knowing that like because you're focusing on like take for example Forgotten Land, so you're piling these rocks up and you're focusing on I guess orientation, drawing the eye, etc. But has all these assets improved your ability to make assets in the future, if that makes sense? Because your
Yeah,
eyes just developed, if that makes sense.
yeah. So seeing an asset made by a professional modeler who only models all day and that's their job and they've been doing it for many years, seeing how they made something, you can learn a lot from it because you can see, oh, this is how they tuned the roughness values. This
Mm-hmm.
is this is what colors they used in it. This is the resolution of the mesh that they did. They didn't make it too high poly, but they didn't make it too low poly where you would see
Yeah.
the fascinating stuff. So I do actually learn quite a bit from looking at other people's models. Even
Mm-hmm.
on ArtStation, some of the super pretty like prop renders that other prop artists, modelers, or environment artists are uploading, I just
Mm-hmm.
like staring at it because then I can be like,
Same.
oh, this is how they make edgeware look realistic instead of bad, like
Mm-hmm.
vice versa. So yeah, I do learn quite a bit from using other people's stuff because
Cool.
often even just by looking at what the final product is, you can see that they did something completely differently than how you would do it, and then
Yep.
it kind of prompts you to figure out how they did it that way,
Yep.
and it can potentially change your workflow for the better.
Wow. Because like at the day, like I've always thought this is such a viable thing. Like, I feel that like to me the best thing you can ever do as an artist is obviously invest. Understanding like obviously you want to be smart with your money and don't just go
Yeah.
overboard, but like actually invested into new things. Like I said to midway the podcast, I invested into the Gnomon workshop. So for Devon Fay and Jeremy Vickery, that was like £35 for a month of infinite resources. Like there was Naughty Dog breakdowns. It's so good. Like, it was so nice, and like I said, that month allowed me to learn cameras, and it changed everything for me. And I feel that these asset packs, like for example, take Amazing Decagon, like
Oh yeah.
they're making all these amazing packs that people have the chance to observe, look at, and use in their scenes, or whatever it may be. There's other places as well, and I think just not like I know everyone says it all the time, but it's like you don't have to make everything, and
Yeah.
just like what's your thoughts on like that side of things? I guess on like the
I
investing side as well.
right. I think if you are willing to put the time in and you want to learn the full spectrum of all the tools,
Mm-hmm.
then absolutely make every single object in your environment. But at least with me, I don't necessarily feel like I would benefit from doing it. I feel like it would just slow down my creative process, not really in a negative way, but just in a different way where I I just really I like seeing the final product and I like putting the scenes together and I like creating a mood. I
Yeah.
think I like that more than the technical process of blocking out modeling, texturing, and rendering
Mm-hmm.
assets. Like I still enjoy modeling. I just don't enjoy modeling as much as putting an entire scene together.
Nice.
So I'm just realizing what things I enjoy doing more and what things I will like want to become better at
Mm-hmm.
quicker, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and so I just go with that every time pretty much. And so I don't think it's a bad thing to use other assets. Just obviously don't use other assets and then not say whose they are.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously credit the person every time.
Of course.
Uh, uh, I even do it with stuff that I bought just because I like giving the people who spent the time to actually make that stuff
Yeah.
recognition. But you obviously don't always have to if you bought a $50 asset pack. You don't always have to credit them unless that's part of their license. But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, I usually just credit any assets that I make or any assets that I use because I just like other people seeing resources and
Definitely.
starting to use their stuff too.
Thanks so much for that, man. It's been a pleasure having you on. And
Yeah,
let's get into the fun, random stuff.
sure.
Here we go. But yeah, so just there's no rules. There's no kind of take as long as you want per question.
Sure.
There's a few random ones, a few funny ones, you name it, and then the ones that I will stick to like five questions that I ask every single guest as well. So there's
Sure.
trust me, it's not just yourself. I've literally asked everyone this. Right, this might
All
be
right,
a hard
cool.
one, so I always like to ask this one first. Favorite movie?
My favorite movie is Prisoners
Ooh,
by Denis Villeneuve.
wait, what's this about? I've never heard of this.
So, it's a movie that came out in 2013.
Okay,
Uh, it's by the director of uh, Enemy, Arrival, Blade Runner 2049,
nice.
uh, the new movie Dune coming out next or this year or next year or whenever.
Yep.
He's a French Canadian director. The movie Prisoners has Jake Gyllenhaal and Hugh Jackman as the two main characters.
Right. Okay.
Pretty much both of their daughters get taken, and they, I guess, take matters into their own hands in
Yeah,
trying to find the person that took them. And
I've got to watch
uh,
it.
Jake Gyllenhaal is a police officer and helps them along, I guess. And it's just like the cinematography, the tone, the soundtrack,
Mm-hmm.
everything about that movie is a plus in my opinion, and it has been my favorite movie for the last probably 6 or 7 years. Not any movie I've watched in the last like 7 years has beaten it in terms of just I could watch that movie every day for the rest of my life. I don't
Right.
know.
Oh, that's the best feeling ever. Like, right. What I'll do, right, tomorrow you will have a verdict. I will watch that tonight because
it's
I've been
it's
looking
very
for a film to watch. So
just warning. It's a little bit dark and it's a little bit depressing, but
lovely, awesome, happy days. I'll bring my smile. I'll have a good laugh prepared before I watch it. Right, so I'm
it's,
watching Prisoners tonight. That's the objective for tonight.
all right.
Perfect.
Yeah, let me know how it is.
I'll let you know how it goes. Right, this one's always the interesting. This one's an interesting one. What's one thing you think more artists need to focus on?
Lighting.
Great answer. Well,
I feel like I've seen so many, at least I see more um, environments with really strong modeling skills and
mhm.
really strong composition skills and really strong layout skills, but often I see the lighting aspect of it neglected.
Mm-hmm.
Either because they weren't confident enough and decided to end the project early and not flesh out the lighting, or if they had a lack of knowledge and experience. Obviously, it varies per person, but I think the more lighting, you can never know too much about lighting.
Yeah, it's just a
um,
beast in itself.
so it gets extremely complicated if you get super into it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one of those things that I I see a lot of people neglecting it, and I wish they wouldn't.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not like a choice where they're like, "Man, I hate lighting. I'm not gonna light this. Lighting sucks." It's
Mm-hmm.
probably more like they just don't know where to start with learning it,
Yeah.
uh, and so they just don't flesh it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say definitely lighting,
Amazing
100%.
art. Amazing answer. Everyone, get your lighting learning on.
Yeah,
That's the goal.
there are a lot of really resources out there for that.
Oh well, is there anyone that stands out to you?
Um,
I just put you on the
in
spot. Sorry.
No, it's okay. In the Experience Points Discord, I tend to spend a lot of time in the lighting channel because we have a bunch of different people in there
Amazing.
from like Ubisoft Montreal, Rockstar,
Mm-hmm.
other studios like that, and they're all very knowledgeable and know a lot about lighting and have taught me a lot about lighting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they have a lot of good resources too. So
Perfect.
if there would be one thing people should watch the oh God, what's it called? There's a podcast with Boone Cotter. Boone
Okay.
Cotter is a lighting artist at Naughty Dog, and he did like an hour and a half long podcast with. Hold on, I'm going to look it up.
Ryan
One second.
Kingsley.
Uh,
Uh,
Hold on one second. It is. I'm looking it up. CG Society on
oh,
CG
nice. Yeah.
Society's YouTube channel. There is a live session with Boone Cotter,
Mm-hmm.
and it called "The Art of Lighting" the Art of Lighting for Games, and it is the most informative thing I've ever watched on lighting.
Also, that's another wait. Let me write that. I'll have to write that down. I'll make sure to remember that for everyone at the at the end of the podcast. Let me type that in.
Yeah, it would be cool. People like it or something.
Just so, because I know everyone will be asking, it's like, wait, what's that link? Alex said. Right. Okay. Next one. Right. This is actually my favorite question when it comes to this. Favorite cartoon as a kid.
Oh man, it has to be a tie between Ed and Eddie
Oh yes.
and or Courage the Cowardly Dog.
Oh right. I've not heard that in ages. Right. Okay. Good
I
choices. Good choices.
yeah I I'm 23, so I grew up like at the height of Cartoon Network
Yeah.
stuff and Nickelodeon stuff. So I watched a lot of those, and
Nick.
I enjoyed most of them, but those were my favorite. Even though Courage the Cowardly Dog was pretty dark
Mm-hmm.
and pretty like spooky for kids to be watching it, it still was it was really good.
Yeah, Nickelodeon was where it was at. You can't go wrong with Nickelodeon. Like
True.
I was saying this to we were talking about this. You said the same answer as Kamal as Ken. From
Courage the Cowardly Dog.
no Ed and
Ed,
Eddie.
Eddie?
You,
Oh
you
wow, I
guys
didn't
both
know
said the
that.
same thing,
I'll
and
tell him that. That's funny.
because he loves that, and because we were talking about Dexter's Laboratory,
That's a good one too.
Fairly Odd Parents. Is it no? It's Fairly Odd
Yeah,
Parents.
Fairly
And
on Paris was
what else
amazing.
was there? And wait,
There's a bunch.
Was Powerpuff Girls on that as well?
That was one of the ones too. There was also Johnny
Oh,
Bravo.
Johnny Bravo, yes. Oh my lord, you can't forget Johnny Bravo. Did
Those are all good.
do you remember? I don't remember where it was from. Right, this is either someone's like I know people are listening and they know what I'm talking about. But this is either edited or it was actually an episode. So there was an episode of Scooby Doo, right?
Mhm.
And Velma lost her glasses. And then Johnny Bravo's sitting right beside her, and so Velma says, "I can't see without my glasses." And then Johnny Bravo, he's also lost his glasses, and he's like, "I can't be seen without my glasses." And it is so
Oh,
funny. It was such a good clip. I was just like, "Yep, that's just Johnny Bravo in a nutshell."
yeah, that Oh, that show was great.
It was
I also really liked Jimmy Neutron,
Jimmy
which
Neutron. Oh,
that's
dude.
like more of just like an animated show, but it's still really good.
Yeah. Oh man, literally because of this virus stuff as well. So when I put my hair up, right, it's so long that I'm literally Jimmy Neutron hairstyle. It's that long. I'm just like, yep, we're rolling with it.
I really need a haircut.
Oh, I've decided I'm going back to having long hair. I'm going back to the old days, back
Yeah,
to shoulder length.
I think a lot of people are doing the same.
Yeah, it's like, I'm not going out. I'm just going to. 8 months of just going back to the old ways. We'll see what happens. Dude,
Yeah.
this is why I love this question. There's nothing better than cartoons as a kid.
All
Come
the
on,
nostalgia.
like just not nostalgia's the best, right? You can't beat it, right?
Yeah.
Now this might be a challenging one, but as easily as you answered the movie one, it might be easy. Favorite game?
See, I knew you would ask this, so
Oh,
I
damn
thought
it!
about it beforehand.
Darn it! Wait, did I
All right.
tell you? Did I tell you
No,
this? Oh, right, okay.
I actually watched a few of the other ones
Oh,
before this.
awesome, perfect. Oh, happy days.
I didn't know that you ask it every time, but I just kind of assumed this would be one of the
Yeah,
questions.
it's the one I ask every time.
And I have a top three, and the top two are tied, kind of interchangeable. It varies depending on how I'm feeling.
Mhm.
But my two favorite games are The Last of Us
Mhm.
and Inside.
Inside. Wait, I've not heard of this. I've completely missing out on something, aren't I?
Inside is a 2.5D, so pretty much a 2D platformer
Mm-hmm.
made by a studio called Playdead.
Okay.
They made a game called Limbo,
Right.
uh,
I've heard
and
of that.
they're both very short, very moody
Mm-hmm.
games that have fairly simple platforming mechanics and puzzle mechanics, but they're mostly in for the story. I highly recommend playing both. They're always super cheap on Steam.
Inside. Let's have a look.
Inside, yeah.
Inside. Oh, right. Okay. I'm liking this style already. Right. Nice.
Oh, it's fantastic.
There was.
There are a bunch of really good GDC talks from the developers on Inside and the other one.
Yeah.
Limbo.
Oh, dude, you might know this. Well, you'll probably know this way better than me. I don't know what it's called, but there was this game that came out. Probably, I think it was was it 2 years ago? It was on E3. It was like a medieval game, but the thing that made it a twist is like none of the characters had faces.
Oh, it's called Ashen.
Yeah, that's the one. Like, have you played that?
I
Because that looks good.
I played it in person
Mm-hmm.
when it was in alpha like 3 or 4 years ago before
Right.
it was out, but that was pretty much it. I never bought it.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. A lot of people say it's similar to Dark Souls, but
Okay.
I have a friend who really likes it, but I haven't really played it.
Yeah.
But the art style is fantastic.
Oh, it's so good. It looks so beautiful. It's like, I don't know. It was weird. It's just that I've never seen a game where characters had no faces. Like, that's the first time I ever saw it.
Yeah, the thing with Inside that the developers were saying is uh what was it? It was like low detail, high fidelity
Mm-hmm.
is like their like words to live by for the production of that game.
Yeah.
Meaning the lighting is very soft, the lighting is very accurate, the lighting is very color or lack of color to give it a correct mood, but all of the models are extremely simple and basic
Yeah.
to make you focus on other things.
Right. Wow. Perfect.
Inside is fantastic. And then my third place is Half-Life 2. But
Oh, okay, nice. You have to get out of here. You've got to get out of there.
yeah.
Because that's always the thing. Like, it's such a hard question. Like, for me, because I've asked it so many times, I know what my answers are. It's but the only thing I struggle with is so the game I play the most is not my favorite. Well, I don't know. Like, so I play Call of Duty Relentless, but my favorite games have always been like Uncharted 4, Jack and Daxter, and then I'm a huge God of War fan. Like, I'm obsessed with God of War.
Those are also good.
Like, oh yeah, like just I could do a whole podcast talking about Jack and Daxter, man. Like, if I need to one day, just a whole episode, I could talk about it non-stop. Right, we've got 4 more questions. So it's like, oh gosh, there's more. Right, this one's always a fun random one. If you had to choose between bungee jumping or skydiving, what would you choose and why?
Probably. I don't know. I'm open to doing either.
All right, good, nice, sweet.
Probably skydiving. That just the feeling of flying through the air. I
Mhm.
feel like bungee jumping. I feel like it would like hurt my neck once I got to like the lowest point of the
Yeah,
cable because it would just like jerk you. But
yeah,
apparently it's not that bad. But I would probably do skydiving as long as I mean I would probably have trust issues with the person that you're attached to because
yeah.
if you don't have a skydiving license, you have to be attached to a person that does.
Mhm.
But that would be fun. I think there's skydiving near where I used to live. So one of my friends did it once. He said it was fun. I don't
Yeah,
know. Seems like it would be fun.
perfect. Yeah, I always like asking these random ones. You never know. No idea what to expect. I've been asking so many Marvel questions. I had to change it up. I've asked too many Marvel questions. I'm too obsessed with my comics. Right. Next one. Uh, oh gosh, this one's a hard one. This is there's a reason why I ask the questions because then it makes it easier for me.
Sure.
If you could have, wait, is there a game coming out this year that you're looking forward to the most, or like what game are you like? I can't wait for that.
Based on my top three games, two of which got.
Oh yeah, sorry, you already know your answer. I didn't think about that.
So one of them is obviously The Last of Us
Last of Us
Part.
Two. Yep.
Um, I won't talk. I won't talk about the leak stuff because that's just annoying. But I don't know anything about the leaks. But
Neither do I. I
um,
don't want to. I just
Half-Life
avoid.
Alex, Half-Life Alex was another one.
Mm-hmm.
That was I already played it. It's fantastic. It was really good. It's my
Mm-hmm.
favorite game I played this year. But yeah, The Last of Us Part Two.
Yeah.
And then
Good answer.
Cyberpunk, like it's gonna be fun too. Um, Death Stranding's coming to PC. I'll probably replay it on there.
Nice.
Bunch of other games, I guess.
Sweet. Yeah, because like for me, it's I like so the studio I'm looking forward to. So I don't know when they're going to be doing it, but it's Warner Brothers. So Warner Brothers
Oh,
supposedly have 3 games out this year, supposedly
really?
as I could say the don't want me to I could say the games, but it might be I don't want to spoil anything.
Oh no, go for it.
Right. So the games that they're meant to be releasing is a new Batman game,
Ooh.
and then they're also going to be doing a new Harry Potter game. That's an
Oh
RPG.
yeah, I've heard about that. I'm excited for
I
that.
am so buzzing for that.
I don't know anything about it, but it sounds really good.
It sounds like Harry Potter is my life. Anything Harry Potter related is what I want. So if that comes out this year, I just like when like I'm so happy that E3 did that announcement of stopping it because it made so much sense. But it's like
Yeah.
there's so many things kicking off in 2020.
Surprised they don't do like an online only thing where they just
Yeah.
do a big like 2 day long stream or something, or
Mm-hmm.
3 or 4 day long stream and just do all of the announcements through the stream.
Yeah.
I feel like people would still watch it.
Because
I don't know.
Ubisoft announced the Assassin's Creed game.
Creed Valhalla. That
The,
looks so good too.
the trailer. Oh my gosh, it was just like because
Fantastic.
did you watch the trailer? Yeah.
Yeah, I did
Like
yesterday. Fantastic.
like man, no joke. It was the first time in ages, right, that I genuinely thought they were going to show a trailer where the main guy died. I was like, wait, what's going on here? Like you just saw the giant like I don't know was he like I don't know like what his background was.
I don't either.
He looked like he was like a Roman. He wasn't a Roman. Like there wouldn't be Romans in that time, but I don't know who he was fighting. The guy he was like the Viking was fighting a guy who was like 6'5" or 7 foot, and then
Yeah.
suddenly out of nowhere, I'm not sure if I should spoil it because hopefully everyone's seen it. But then something happens, and you're just like, wait, what? I did not see that coming at all. I was like, wait, is he just gonna die straight away? But
Yeah, that was a really good trailer.
it looks so cool. But
I'm really excited for gameplay.
oh man, it's gonna be awesome. Right, last question, and it's the same question I ask every single podcast. It's the most random question out of them all. If you could
Sure.
have any animal in the animal kingdom or fantasy world of every game or film that you've ever made as a pet, that's roughly like the size of a laptop, so very small, what would you choose and why?
Oh man. Oh.
You're like, oh my gosh, what?
If I had unlimited money and I lived in a large house that could have a like a pool aquarium environment thing,
Mhm.
I would do like a family of sea otters.
Oh, right, sick, right, okay, nice, okay.
Awesome.
That would be
Like
cool.
a fake wave pool with where sea otters would
Yeah,
live.
they're all just chilling. You could just have like a mini beach as well. They just see them.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
That'd be awesome. I love sea otters. They're
See,
cool.
what an answer! I have all my guests. It's always a good laugh, man. You've got to ask the most random questions sometimes. I tell you that. Like some of the answers I've got as well. It's just hilarious. Like I've always said mine's a shark. As cliche as it, but I'm a massive shark fan. Like
What kind of shark?
as cliche, it's just got to be a great white. But so many sharks. Like I've just reached like read into like oh gosh, I keep forgetting it. What's it called? This is like the coolest shark I've ever heard. I've forgotten the name, but basically there's a shark that was around obviously millions of years ago, right? That had armor. So basically it had
Oh yeah,
it had its bones, right? And then it has skin, and then it has bones again. So
yeah.
basically, it's fully armored, and no, there's never been anything to bite through it ever in history. So it was literally like a ton, it weighed like a few tons, right? And literally, like, you couldn't eat it. Like there was no. So say if I'm pretty sure it was around the period of Megalodon, and it wouldn't even stand a chance. Like it was just like it was the one
Jeez.
thing that Megalodon did. Like I think the only way to eat it is like say if I don't know a killer whale or a whale like, could swallow it in one. But it was just literally just like armor, and if, I don't know. Ever since I've watched like stuff about sharks and dinosaurs, I was all for it.
Wow.
But I will finish it like that. Alec, it has been incredible having you on the podcast. Oh man, it's been such an awesome episode. Most importantly, everyone, as always, make sure to give the man a follow. You'll be seeing all his social medias and art work, etc., playing on the slideshow as you guys have been tuning in on YouTube. So you can see his Twitter. Wait, do you use Twitter? Is it just Instagram and ArtStation?
I do have a Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really use it a whole lot, but yeah, I do have a Twitter. I can send you a link to it.
Perfect. Yes, that's perfect. So all links will be in the description below. Make sure to give him a follow because by gosh, does the man make amazing work. If you guys are tuning in on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe. As always, we're closing in on 3,000 subscribers, folks. So thank you so much. We really do appreciate. We're growing. We're getting there. It's nice to see. And drop a like as always, and we will see you guys in the next episode. Bye for now.
Thank you so much. See you guys.